quickly cut over to this scene where we discover that Crosshair, only a rotation or so ago, was behaving in ways and doing things that he has come to regret. Crosshair went behind Hunter's back and reported that they did not eliminate Caleb Doom. Crosshair felt at the time that it was his duty to make this report, but I also think a lot of anxiety and stress is the result of this. We know there are severe consequences to not following through with Order 66, and Crosshair does not want his brothers to suffer those consequences. There's a reason Crosshair keeps defending the Empire when his brothers show the slightest bit of disloyalty. It's because he needs them to stay in good standing with the Empire so that they don't die. To Crosshair, their very survival is hinged on melding with this new government. But Tech brings up things that Crosshair just can't ignore. Their values have always been different, and now they clash even more with the institution that owns them. Remember, the clones are property, and Hunter is starting to feel the stress of the disharmony in his squad. Then, unexpectedly, Tarkin joins this contentious moment, and Crosshair looks surprised, if not a bit jump-scared. Tarkin arriving could mean a few things, but one of those things could be Crosshair's worst fear, which is that Tarkin has decided that the Batch are not worth the Empire's time since they do not exhibit sufficient loyalty. But he's here to instead send them on a mission, which consequentially is a secret way to test that loyalty. When Tarkin mentions Onderon, Echo immediately relaxes. He's thinking, Onderon, Rex told me about them. They were determined people who fought hard to throw off the Separatist invasion. Echo asks, what kind of insurgents? Because he's probably thinking humans or droids. Humans don't make any sense, but neither do droids. Echo, Tech, and Hunter are all very suspicious about this. The blocking in this scene was done very purposefully so that those who are going to be suspicious of Tarkin are all grouped together. Meanwhile, Crosshair and Wrecker don't have any clue what's going on, which is odd. Crosshair is not dumb. Not saying Wrecker is, but, well, there are certain things he doesn't pay attention to.
What?
But Crosshair should be as suspicious as these three, but he isn't, because the chip blocks out disloyal thoughts about the Empire, and thinking that the Empire is trying to set them up is a pretty disloyal thought. Also, I'm literally hyperventilating at this small detail that's so small I can't even properly catch it on my camera. I beg of you to go look at this on your own time. Guys, Echo's eyes, for about 1 second before Tarkin's ugly head crosses in front of him, they flicker like he's reading something. I think he's diving into his cybernetics and looking up intel, his memories about Onderon. This show, I'll just never get over the details in this show. Anyway, so the Batch have now been separated into two parties, those who think the mission is just another mission, and those who know something stinks. Echo and Tech at this point haven't given up on trying to figure out what about this mission is off. I love the idea that even though Echo has a computer brain, Tech is still better at cracking codes and slicing into databanks.
Can you rig an interface? I assume that's a rhetorical question.
We are then blessed with this interaction between Wrecker and Crosshair. Clearly, they have other things on their minds: action, battle, ammo. Here's a beautiful depiction of what we were not privy to. Crosshair crying over the armory. He doesn't deny it. He totally cried. I love that he and Wrecker have that to share. We also get a lot of small expressions from Crosshair while he watches his brothers bicker. We get another exasperated head shake. It's nice to see Crosshair as he's meant to be in this dynamic. It also shows how much he cares. He isn't annoyed as much as he's like, oh, those two, they'll never understand each other. But Crosshair also has a very solemn moment when Wrecker says everything is back to normal, because even though things appear to be more regular than they once were, the Jedi incident can be put behind them, Crosshair knows there's still something different about him, and he still doesn't know why. But we still get to indulge in some brotherly moments, because look at the way he pauses here. Hunter has barely even entered the hangar, and Crosshair is alerted to his presence. He's waiting for him, but then Omega shows up again, and you know at this point Crosshair is in the background somewhere, trying desperately to listen in because he is anxious about this interaction. You kind of know because when Hunter comes back from it, Crosshair's immediately like, so what the heck was that about? Because he had dismissed the whole Omega thing, and now she's back again, trying to worm her way into Hunter's heart, which she has successfully done. I'm sorry, Crosshair. Hunter is a weak man. He sees a child and must be their father. He didn't choose to be this way. It's in his DNA. It's probably in yours too. Look deep inside, you know this to be true. And though Crosshair is feeling a little bit of anxiety at Omega's reappearance, he has the benefit of knowing that realistically Omega can't really be in their lives. They aren't going to take a child with them anywhere, which is where this line comes in. But it's also such a heartwarming gesture, a true attempt to console and support Hunter. And scene, that's it. Crosshair is never, ever going to be normal again ever, and neither am I. There's no way I can be normal about the scenes ahead. My heart is sinking because now we get into the really hard stuff. The chip is about to rear its ugly head again. It is out for blood, and it is not pretty. The mission starts off great. Everything seems to be back to normal. There's banter, there's jokes, there's pushing Wrecker's buttons. And boom, there's suddenly a huge tonal shift, and I am in physical pain. When the rest of the batch discover the true nature of this mission, they are genuinely shocked. They knew something was off, but they didn't realize it would be this off. But Crosshair coldly strings it all together for them. Unlike the rest of his brothers, his ability to assess the situation is sabotaged because of the chip. The chip's influence is at its peak when Crosshair is under direct orders, and during this time, it does what it's designed to do, which is to inhibit his cognitive function so that he is not questioning the order he is given. Remember that the chip's primary function is to inhibit communications between certain parts of the brain. The Kaminoans claimed that this was to inhibit aggression and make the clones more complicit. Fun fact, this is what lobotomies accomplished in the mid-20th century. But the Kaminoans failed to mention that this inhibiting feature was to make room for something else, because eventually the chip would receive a signal and start to broadcast messages directly into the clones' brains. The default message appearing to be, good soldiers follow orders. And if they don't follow orders, they are traitors. And if they are traitors, they are subject to execution. In this moment, Crosshair is so frustrated at Hunter because to him, Hunter is risking all of their lives. Once before, Hunter failed to carry out orders, but that was just for him. Now he is making a decision for all of them that could result in them being accused of treason. The pressure is really starting to crack down on Crosshair. He gives Hunter a chance to make the call. Crosshair knows that if he pulls the trigger now without Hunter's okay, he will be damaging his relationship with his squad, perhaps beyond repair. And he's scared. He's scared of a few things, and I think the thing that he's the most afraid of is that he will not be able to stop himself. But if Hunter makes the call for him, he doesn't have to worry about making that decision alone. And who knows where this scene would have gone if Guerrera's men hadn't shown up. This growl that he makes right here isn't just frustration. It is him using all of his willpower to shake off the compulsion to obey the chip and instead put his trust in Hunter. It's an incredible display of self-control, because when it comes down to it, Crosshair has been trusting Hunter with his life and the life of his brothers for years now. And at this point, the chip isn't strong enough to prevent him from doing what he's been doing his entire life. I can't imagine how awkward it must be to be forced to confront the people you were sent to wipe off the face of the galaxy and then try to explain to them that you didn't know they were mostly civilians, but thank goodness Saw was willing to meet with them because later in life, things might have not gone so smoothly.
Lies! Deceptions! Poor Gullet.
So much is riding on this confrontation with Saw. If anything, they can convince Crosshair that these people are not traitors and insurgents. So it's unfortunate that Saw comes out and clearly states that yes, they are against the Empire and they do have plans to fight it. And to make things worse, Saw directs a lot of aggression their way, which of course is only going to provoke Crosshair into saying something equally as aggressive. Seriously, Saw is just about the worst person to be representing these actually innocent people. And even though Saw has the most shootable face Crosshair has ever seen, he still withdraws when Hunter tells him to, because he is still willing to look for answers. Because even though Saw may seem like a reasonable target to Crosshair, he is not blind to the fact that civilians are part of the group the batch were tasked with eliminating, and seeing these innocent people really does have an impact on him, just like it has an impact on the rest of his brothers. His perspective may actually be malleable at this moment. He certainly seems less agitated, and though he is more receptive to the idea that, yeah, they certainly did the right thing and not immediately blasting these people away, he's still not convinced that Saw isn't somehow twisting the truth. I love it when Crosshair looks over to Tech here when Tech challenges Saw's remarks about Palpatine's illegitimate reign. His face is definitely saying, hell yeah, brother, you tell him. This head tilt as Tech explains the Empire's justifications for Order 66 seems to communicate that Guerrera had better have a damn good response, because if Crosshair can have any sort of logical explanation to cling to, especially if it's backed by tech, his life will become a million times easier. But unfortunately, things don't go that way. Saw's response really puts things into perspective, and he would have been more convincing if he hadn't also included his plans to resist the Empire. Crosshair's line is really interesting here. Crosshair is actually making an attempt at negotiation. His expression shifts to say, listen, you have a lot to protect, I understand, but the orders were to stop those who wanted to keep the galaxy at war. It's a warning, sure, but it's one that seems focused on convincing Saw to actually back down. However, Saw, of course, stands his ground because he is as severe and unyielding as another guy we know and love. Y'all give Crosshair a hand because he really is trying to prevent murdering people. It's really interesting when this question is asked by one of Saw's men. What do we do with them? Because it is asking aloud the question that the Batch are all thinking about themselves. Hunter makes it pretty clear that they have no intention of joining Saw, but they also know that things are too different now. They cannot go back to Kamino and pretend like things are going to be the same. But regardless of what they choose, what Saw has to say is some pretty good food for thought. Not to mention, it's like the entire thesis statement for the Bad Batch as a show. The blocking here is so interesting. The literal focus of the camera is on Hunter, but Crosshair is perfectly framed in the shot so that you are forced to look at him also. And even though he is out of focus, which do I need to point out the visual storytelling there, he is very expressive. The reason they chose to also highlight his reaction is because Saw's words have a big impact on him. The situation they've been put in is forcing them to make choices that may result in life or death. And the way he looks at Hunter makes me think that he is unsure about having that choice in Hunter's hands. The scene ends with Crosshair very much unconvinced, which is not good because since Saw is definitely a threat to the Empire, the chip is what wins when the light is shut off and the conversation ends. You can see how aggravated he is with watching Saw just walk away. The weight of the direct order is too great, and Crosshair's mind is thrown out of balance worse than ever before.